It was late October 1988. The temperature had dipped to a chill, and everywhere there were queues. Queues for bread, queues for milk, queues for cigarettes. I remember the queues for cigarettes most of all. That was a nervous, volatile queue that I dared not join. Everything was scarce, but more than anything else, or so it seemed, there was a shortage of toilet roll. When the sun shone, some women would drape lengths of it about their necks and stroll down Długa Street, stopping again and again to examine shop windows. I had been in the city for a month, and my senses were beginning to sharpen. Although I no longer heard the church bells tinkling from the tower like an enormous children's toy, I'd learned to count the police vans, squat grey Soviet concoctions, ringed with a blue stripe that marked with the word Militia that snaked through the streets between the old town and the docks. I watched old ladies with swollen legs, wrapped in shawls and overcoats, hurry past my window with their heads bent to the wind. Later in the afternoon, they would be joined on the street by men who had drifted back from the docks, and I would listen to their voices, not understanding a word, but trying to guess the pitch of their mood, the depth of their frustrations, or their proximity to anger. Occasionally there would be a confrontation, there would be a shout, and echoes of a scuffle, and then the guttural roar of a militia van accelerating away. But remember, this was 1988, and this was the People's Republic of Poland. These things happened, and then life went on. It was a Thursday, and I woke early. I walked north along the river, breathing in the brisk Baltic air. At length I stopped and sat on an ornate iron bench, one of those that is so designed to give the littlest possible comfort to its inhabitant. But it overlooked a pretty bend in the river, and by now the sun was rising on its upward arc, and it cast long, pleasing shadows along the seafront. 1, 2, 3, 4. There were just 4 people I could see around me. 2 men, one short, one tall, were heaving a bag along, each of them holding one of the straps, and the object swung cradle-like between them, as if they were some kind of comic duo. In the other direction, an elderly couple were approaching. I watched them closely. They moved slowly and deliberately. They were both of middling height. The man was lithe, with cotton white hair that blew in the breeze. His wife clung onto his right forearm. They drew near and stopped. I watched the man loosen his wife's grip and then help her gently down onto the bench, almost as if he was lowering a newborn child into water for the very first time. All of this was done smoothly and without a sound. As he took his place beside his wife, I felt a tremor of unease. There were three of us bundled here, close together, in an otherwise empty scene. Later on this path, I knew this path would fill with workers and residents, but not quite yet. I tried to mask my anxiety by staring dead straight, out to the river, towards the docks in the distance, where the enormous cranes were outlined against a hard blue sky. Then I heard a soft voice speaking to me in words I did not understand. I turned to find a man looking inquiringly at me. He had a thin face, deep-set eyes, and a sharp nose. "I'm sorry," I said. "I don't speak Polish." "Oh," he replied after a pause. I was saying we shall have the very first snow soon." He spoke these English words slowly, but with an element of precision, perhaps a relic of some strict education long ago. "How do you know?" I asked. "Because the sky is blue," he replied. "When the sky is blue at the end of October, what more could it mean than that the snow is coming?" We were quiet for a moment as I attempted to absorb this logic, and then I imagined for a moment how the snow would transform the landscape, how it would cling to the spires of the cathedral and drift and slide from the tall roofs of the skinny buildings on Długa I like the snow, I said. With the snow, the city must look like a completely different place. The man tilted his head gently to the right. In Polish, we have a saying, he replied. We say, what has gingerbread to do with a windmill? I don't think a little snow will make any difference to the city at all. I was growing uncomfortable. There seemed little thread to this conversation. A barrel-chested man hurried by and I let my eyes follow him. The man kicked a stone from the path and it collided with a steel bin and rebounded back into his shin. We both smiled. I mean, said the man, his English growing perceptibly more confident, I mean, the city has changed and changed. One generation vanishes into another, one country vanishes into another, one person vanishes into another. Of course, this happens everywhere, but not quite like here. Look at me. If you had met me when I was 20 years old, I would have told you that my name is Helmut Degler, and I was born in Danzig. If you ask me today, I will tell you that my name is Henryk Jaworski, and I was born in Gdansk. The city has changed so much. A little snow is nothing to it. We sank again into a thoughtful quiet. Like everyone else in the city, I'd heard the name. Jaworski was a composer of some little renown. The image of him sat straight-backed, poised and silhouetted at his piano was amongst the city's most familiar. I looked down at his hands. They were thin and blue-veined and dotted with liver spots. I saw how his right hand rested gently on his wife's leg. She sat in silence. I remember a time, he said. It was a few years after the end of the Second War. I was playing in a jazz band, and we had been asked to play at a concert in a town away on the coast. I had gone for a walk, and I heard the sounds of men shouting, arguing. I went to see what it was, and found that a whale was stranded on the beach. I walked right up to it. It was so powerful, it was so huge, and so helpless. What happened to it? I asked quickly. Well, there was a great debate. There were so many hungry people, and one man wanted to carve it up into tiny portions to feed his family. He said that there was nothing more excellent on the tongue or in the belly than whale and cabbage. His eyes shone as he spoke. He pulled out a knife and said he would plunge it into the whale's head, and with a quick twist it would be dead. But then another man came forward. He put his arm across the first man's body. He said that he had looked into the whale's eyes, and he said, once you look into the eyes of a creature, it's impossible for you to do any harm to it afterwards. People started to agree with him, and then we saw that the tide was already rushing in. We filled buckets with seawater and tipped them over the whale's head. More and more came, and soon there were 50 people on this beach, passing buckets of water along like a crew of old firemen. And did it live? I said. It did, he said. The tide swept over it, and with a great heave it slid away. We saw it for a moment, the rounded top of its body shining above the water, and then it was gone. And all the time, in the villages everywhere, people searched for food. There were more people around us now. Groups of workers were walking by on their way to work at the shipyards. There was a swagger in their step. There was a low mutter of conversation. Jaworski pulled a photograph from inside his jacket, and he passed it to me. It showed him and his wife on their wedding day. They both were looking sternly into the camera, him in a black evening suit, and her in a flowing white gown, her hair a bramble with dark curls. This was the 15th of February 1945, the day after St. Valentine's. It is perhaps, he added with a smile, the very last ever photograph taken of Helmut Degler. I held up the photograph and looked past Jaworski to the grey and silent lady who sat beside him on the bench. He anticipated me. We must hold on to what we have, he said. For almost 2 years my wife has not said a thing, not to me, not to our children, and not to our friends. Nobody knows why. We live a normal life, but it has become a silent life. We walk here every day. We sit and we watch the river and the workers, and then we walk home. I think it makes her happy. I hope it does. Maybe we've had enough change. Maybe, I said.